destinies in their hands and can make those decisions. I mean, it's trickled to me and be able to obviously charge my path, have a career the way I did have a career, and then become an entrepreneur in the way that I'm talking about financial freedom and independence to help women like myself who want to achieve that freedom and autonomy in their life.
I love that. We have hope. So what is the impact, Bonita, on women with this sort of, let's say it's a newfound access to credit, though it has been 50 years. Yeah. But what are you seeing in terms of credit and wealth?
Yeah, I love that you made the point that it's not about how much you make. It's not about your household income. It is about accessing the tools and becoming used to having the habitual use, the confidence, the comfort. You talked about confidence as well. Because what we find is that, one, being a primary person on your bank account, making sure then you start with your debit or your credit card and you use that regularly, you gain confidence there, you access a credit card, even if you don't prefer to use it regularly, you might want to use it situationally. That builds your credit history. And in general, we find that people who use those, but certainly women and people of color who start that earlier in their journey, they gain that confidence earlier, and then they have a path to financial health that is accelerated. We did a study in Latin America as an example, but it's certainly applicable here in the United States, where consumers who had access to their debit and credit cards earlier in their journey, in their first 3 to 6 months of starting their banking relationship, were able to get to what we call financial health, accessing loans, accessing investments within 2 years, much sooner than consumers who are only using a debit or a prepaid card, for example. So this access and making sure then that you get comfort with the tools is really, really important to our progress.
It's so important. I mean, I even say today, I see so many women who are getting divorced, they've been married, and they don't have a credit card in their own name. Yeah. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And today we have this law, we need to do this.
Indeed, and then don't have the confidence to use those tools because it's new, right?
Perfect. Hold that thought. Now, coming up, we'll examine the new ways women are taking their financial journey into their own hands.
Why would I vote for someone who doesn't respect me?
I don't think that he cares about any women in the state of Ohio.
Women have made great strides since the passage of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, but there is still work to be done. Jamila, what steps can women take to continue educating themselves, so kind of get up to speed?
I think the one thing that women have as their superpower is our power of community and asking for help. And I know sometimes that's not always something we do outright, but I do think it's inherent in us to have a community-based focus. So it is that continuing to talk to our neighbors, the fellow women in our lives, reaching back even with our own children, or if we are aunts or mothers of others. So for example, I am a mom of 3. My youngest is a girl and my 2 oldest are boys, and she is so full of energy, light, and smarts, and so are the boys. But then you look at how things progress over time and how it is that mostly the males get the positions and the dominant positions in the workplace. And so I think it's really important as people in our community, as women, to continue to teach the younger ladies, the women and empower them that they're smart. You can make decisions. You can forge ahead just as any man can. And so I do think that comes back to the community aspect of us helping each other, helping one another grow, and helping to keep that confidence in our girls as they grow up.
Excellent. I like the idea of women having money book clubs. I think because women love book clubs, I think they need money ones. Lorna, are younger women are they more engaged in their financial lives than previous generations?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes by far. In our research, we certainly see that. You said something that's really important, though. Community, when women mobilize, usually they can fix a lot of things. And that energy is powerful. In fact, I was just recently, as yesterday, on a women's network talking about everything money and important to them and sharing best practices and taking notes and learning from each other, which I think is really important. The other thing, too, is when you think about the workplace, the natural place to begin, by the way, the differences in the generation, the younger generations are demanding workplaces to help them with their financial wellness. Older generations never even asked. So that confidence, that boldness, is the difference of the newer generations. But the first place, and you put a lot of companies sort of on their back foot, there's a ton of companies that think about financial wellness as an offering in and of itself. 10 years ago, that was not the case, right? It was traditional 401k plans or health savings accounts or even equity compensation awards. But now financial wellness, those tools, the access to even employee networks inside of a company, is really important. And so we're seeing that with younger generations. What's interesting to me is also seeing the lag of the company. So almost 100% of companies that we've actually researched, if we take a look at our existing book of business at Bank of America, would say we want to provide financial wellness to our employees, yet only half actually have financial wellness programs. And even further, half of those don't look at the metrics to say, are they successful in moving the behaviors forward? So there's more work to do even in workplaces.
Yeah, and it's not just saving, right? It's all kinds of aspects of
Correct.
not being afraid to ask the questions they think are stupid, right?
Correct. But I think also, you made a really good point. Women in our research learn better when they're surrounded by other women.
Oh, I like, okay. Bonita, women entrepreneurs, women start businesses like mad, right? I mean, it's really something that we do to build wealth. They still have a lack of access to capital.
They do.
So tell me a little bit about what women are facing today in this arena.
Yeah, it's a great question and a great point. And I'm going to bring it back to your point about community. At MasterCard, we've been focusing on empowering women-owned businesses and businesses by people of color because they fuel our economy, they fuel society, and ultimately when we support these business owners, both men and women, but certainly disproportionately women who have a lack of access to capital, we find that not only is it feeding the community, it's feeding their families and so much more. So it's a very, very important community for us to focus on. But what we also find is that it's one part access to capital. We have a program that we call Strive that we do hand in hand with many of our financial institution partners, and within that Strive Women. And in going beyond access to capital comes back to this point of community. Having someone I can talk to, having someone I can network with, someone who can have their hand on my back and make me feel confident in the choices that I'm making, helps me utilize that capital effectively, helps me power my business, helps me give beyond my own business to my community. And so it's really, really important to keep the two concepts connected, which is both access to capital and access to financial knowledge and confidence.
So I guess this is for all of you just to quickly respond. Are we reaching women early enough about taking control of their finances?
Well, I definitely like to hop in because meeting women where they are is so important, and in the way they speak and how they consume media. Yeah. So things have changed decades ago, or even when this Equal Opportunity Credit Act was enacted, because the way we consume content is different. Yeah. Think about your nieces or your, the younger generations, they're on social media.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of the reasons I started my podcast, because I listened to so many podcasts and was inspired by the stories I heard of women changing their lives by changing their finances. And so is it where we are communicating and how we are communicating that is so important, which is why we have to speak their language in the methods in which they understand. And don't be afraid to speak plainly. Indeed. To get rid of the jargon. For sure. I know that when I have my listeners, people who read my book say, you sound like a friend in my head. Yeah. You sound like somebody I would know, where I don't feel intimidated to ask questions or to say I made a mistake. So I think that's the most important way that we can reach and talk to the generations.
Can I double down on that?
Absolutely.
The Gen Z consumer, to your point, these are people who are 12 to 27 years old. They're digital natives, they're social natives, right? At MasterCard, we study them so closely because they are the generation of the future. They're our workforce going forward. And they're not they're not learning through traditional means. They are on social media. And so it's important for us to find ways to ensure they're getting trusted and safe information, right? If I'm finding most of my financial learning through TikTok, are we there together making sure that they're getting safe and appropriate information in TikTok? But we have to be with them where they are. It's a great point.
And I wholeheartedly agree with what you both said. What's interesting to me, and I would have lost the bet on this part of research, I would have assumed the youngest generations want digital and digital only, and that is not the case. When it comes down to making really important financial decisions, they want to talk to somebody. And so, at our company, you said something really important, which is meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. And so we do both tech, so it's on demand whenever you want it. Any topics you want, you can pull it down. But when you need to speak to somebody, we're there too. Mm-hmm. And that becomes really important as complexity grows. Right? And I think when you think about women's life stages, they're just different. There's caregiving all over the place. Mm-hmm. There's disruptions to workplace. There's disruptions to savings and investing. All of those types of things we need to talk about together. I love your point, though, on let's remove the jargon. It's old.
Yep. Now, this is a question, again, for all of you, and And when you alluded to this, I'm going to just step back with you to start with women having unequal pay.
Yeah.
How does that get reflected in lack of credit and lack of, more difficulty getting loans and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it compounds itself. So think about this. In my entire life, whether you subscribe to 76 cents on the dollar, or 82 cents on the dollar, or 84 cents on the dollar, we could actually argue, is it going backward right now? Mm-hmm. It's not just pay inequity. It's the fact that life stages of women, the topic of caregiving is immediate. And so think about that, even just from a savings standpoint, in building wealth, building collateral, right? So if I no longer have access to a 401k plan, I stop savings, I lose the benefit of that tax-deferred savings. In addition, I lose the Social Security credits, let's be real. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes in our research, what we find is when women return to the workplace after having children, they actually give up even more income than when they left. And so we have to be careful of that. And then when you pull the thread all the way, we on average live 5 years longer than our male counterparts. We retire 5 years younger. So it's not just a pay gap, it turns into truly a wealth gap, which actually impacts your loans and your credit and access, right?
It's absolutely right, Lorna. Just building on your point, the U.S. Census data that just came out last week actually confirmed it's 83%, and we went backwards for the first time in 20 years. So one, we're already starting at a disadvantage. So if you play that through, right, a 20-year-old who's coming right out of school or getting their first job over the course of their 40-year career, right, on average is going to be earning a cumulative $400,000 less than her male counterpart. $400,000 less. The median income in the U.S. is approximately $53,000 for women, $53,000, which means it'll take her almost a decade to compensate for what she missed along the way. And that does impact her ability to start her investments, her ability to get her first mortgage. So making sure that we continue to work to close that gap is critical.
Huge.
Yeah.
Jamila?
The transparency between us as women, whether in our friend groups, right, when we go to brunch or to dinner, or even just our family members, is so important. Yeah. But it also transfers to the workplace. Yeah. And, our male counterparts also need to be put on notice too, that it's up to them to share what's going on and to be transparent. Yeah. Because I found, even in my corporate America job, it was, through a male counterpart that I found out how much they were making to make me understand how I was getting paid less. Mm-hmm. And so that transparency is so key between us. And I know that it's scary sometimes to open up. And depending on your culture or how you're raised, you're not supposed to talk about money, or, it's not your business, but it is our business.
Right.
It's for the betterment of not just our households, but for our communities, for our society.
But there is progress, right? I'm very proud to say at MasterCard, women and men now earn dollar for dollar, the same amount. But we still have work to do on the pay gap, because at the end of the day, if we don't have as many senior women in roles as senior men, that is what creates still that gap that we know.
Yep. And if you step out of the workplace too, you lose your opportunity for promotions, which comes with more pay and so forth.
Exactly.
And to your point, that's how I always got my salary up, is asking the men around me what they were making. Listen, up next, we'll gather all the knowledge and information we've collected over the last 50 years and chart a path for the future.
Ever wonder who profits off of out-of-control housing costs? Bernie Moreno does. Moreno's invested millions in a hedge fund run by his powerful family. The Morenos buy up apartments and single-family homes as investments, making them landlords for families like you.
Into their own hands. Now, we shift our focus to the future. Jamila, why are some women still fearful of finance? And they either defer the decisions to their male counterpart or their partner, or they simply, tune out about the whole thing?
As women, we take a lot on. So not just the financial aspects of our lives and our family, but that emotional load. And I think that's not accounted for when it comes to then making now financial decisions. And so it's not that we can't or don't want to. I think a lot of it is confidence. There's that lack of confidence that, I talked about my little girl who is so confident now, and how so many women grow up and lose that. And I think a lot of that is society, the messaging, the just world in which we live in, and why it's up to us as powerful women who are not afraid to speak up to continue to speak about this, to continue to let women and girls know that it's okay to ask questions, no question is stupid, and that it's okay to make a mistake. I think for a lot of us, if we don't have that growth mindset, then when we make a mistake or we don't understand something, we wither. And so it's really important to show that if you don't understand something, that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Have the confidence of that white male counterpart that is still going to go in, even if with a mistake, and keep going. You can do that too.
Bonita, what needs to be done to level the playing field?
Yeah, I think leveling the playing field means, again, meeting people where they are, making sure that the conversation is rich within the community, and making sure there's access to that network. I think, Lorna, you said it very well. It's not just digital. Digital is a great tool, but we also need to make sure that we provide advice and we make that type of advice available in language we can understand. But I do want to touch on digital just for a moment because, again, when we think about the busy lives of women, playing the caregiving roles, whether for their children or for their parents, playing the caregiving roles for even their colleagues at work, right? Sometimes digital helps us make sure that we can get access when we need it, off hours, in a moment where I have a second to myself. And so I do find that making sure that we're making this information available across channels in spaces that I can reach whenever I need it is a way to level the playing field, to make sure that it's not just available between 9 and 5, as an example.
Yep. Access to information.
Yeah.
That's it. Lorna, okay, this is a big one. What is one change that we could make that would have a big impact here?
Just one? You're going to just hold me to one?
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
Give it a shot.
Maybe I'll wrap one into a big one so I can pop a couple of things into it, because you all have said a lot. That the pay gap is really important. And there are a ton of tools now. So you mentioned what MasterCard does. Bank of America has been working with a consultant that comes in. It's basically looking for bias in compensation. There's countries like Iceland that make it illegal to have the same job code and pay differently. There's states like Massachusetts that you can no longer ask a candidate, so what did you make? It's now, first of all, folks have to know that that's out there as well. But I think that, using AI, using a consultant to come on in and take a look at your compensation practices is something that can be done very easily now. You made a phenomenal point, which is be transparent about it, talk about it. My company was doing that for years before they said, oh, let us tell you that we do it, for years, and what that actually means. That gives everybody confidence to understand there is transparency and to understand, what the opportunity is, to sort of add to your skill set. So I think about empowerment as it relates to development and workplaces for women in particular. Having women-focused career development is critically important to make sure that they're adding skill sets so they have opportunity for bigger roles. So to me, I think it starts always with that pay gap, because it does balloon into a wealth gap. It balloons into lesser access, to having funds to open businesses and all the rest.
The repercussions are huge. Really huge. So, is it ever too late to get started on this journey here? And I'll let you all chime in on this one. Do you want to start, Bonita?
Short answer is no. It's definitely never too late. One, you can always seek out tools throughout your journey in whatever channel that works the most for you. I want to come back to the point, Lorna, that you made, though, about the equity, that closing that gap, because that's never too late either, and we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to be intentional about this. If we want to make this right, we have to keep it in focus. And so I'll just give one example, because to your point about transparency, at MasterCard we also have goals. We have our ESG goals that include our equity, our compensation equity, and all of us are paid accordingly, that we've done the right thing. And so there's ways to bring it into your culture and into your day-to-day and make it intentional and make it present.
Well, it's never too late. And I know that sounds so cliche, and someone maybe who's a bit older or definitely starting late feels that way. But I've come across so many people, including myself. And now I know I look young, and I fairly am. But I really didn't start taking my finances seriously and investing really seriously and intentionally until my early 30s. And while for some that's still not too late, I do find that this idea that small progress accumulates. It compounds, just like our money grows over time, is that those habits, that mindset, it helps you move further. And so whether it is saving more or opening that credit card, getting the confidence to ask questions, those compound over time and can make huge differences in your life, no matter how late you're starting. It matters.
But you said something too, it's interesting. In our research, we found that most women, 62% of women actually, would rather talk about their death than their own investing portfolio. Yeah. So we have to figure out a way to make it a little bit more simple. The other thing too is most women want to do enough due diligence to become an expert investor before they invest $1. So what we're trying to say is just invest. You're a good investor. When we ask folks who's your financial role model for women, they would say things like Warren Buffett and Oprah. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't have their numbers. And so that's not how it works for me. But find somebody that you trust that can actually help guide you.
I love it. Great advice, ladies. That brings our conversation to a close. Thanks for joining us as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Women have made tremendous strides in building wealth, achieving financial savvy and financial security, but we still have a long way to go and more work to do. Thanks for joining us.
Why would I vote for someone who doesn't respect me?
I don't think that he cares about